let's break some taboos.
Do you like chocolate? Warm, luxurious, savory, sweet, strong, acrobatic, very funny. He really knows how to work a crowd and he really knows how to make you laugh. No. Not that chocolate. I'm talking about this chocolat. Oui? No? You don't know him? Oh, I'm not surprised. Bonjour mes amis, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Indy. And welcome back to INDIpendent. Today, I'm not going to put on a face. Well, I guess I am. We're going to be talking about another very enigmatic Black person within history. But instead of American history, we're going to go a little bit across the pond right now and study Cuba as well as Paris. So we are going to explore his life and explore the troubles and trials and tribulations that this man really went through. Let's go. Rafael Padilla was a man of African descent that was born in Havana, Cuba, during the reign of the Spanish Empire. This was around the 1860s, and you can imagine that this was really a time when slavery was on the cusp of extinction. It still definitely existed in some way, shape, or form, but the legal ramifications of African slavery were really starting to diminish at this time. There was little known fact about Rafael's early life. He was most likely born into bondage, and this would really help a lot of historians as well as us understand the significant lack of birth records for Rafael. We don't necessarily know which province in Havana, Cuba he was born in. We don't know who his biological parents were. All we do know is that this man was born in Cuba and he definitely existed. An outcast from the start. His last name of Padilla is not his biological last name. In fact, it was of a series of last names that he would take on throughout his life. Little is actually known about Rafael's parents. Frankly, Rafael actually didn't really know that much of his parents himself. I'm sure that he definitely remembered them when he was a kid, but because he was separated from them so young, we really see these instances of the Black family unit being fractured, especially as a result of bondage, as a result of waywardness, not necessarily knowing what to do with your children who were a lot of responsibility. So it is definitely understood why Rafael wouldn't really know his parents during this time, and it would also help to explain why there is such little written record of his birth. However, it is believed that Rafael and his family escaped from a Cuban plantation, then in turn chose to give their son away to be raised. He was sold to an older Cuban woman to raise. They may have gotten even some money for him at the time, but essentially Rafael was alone. He really was alone from the beginning portion of his life. He was then in turn, as you can imagine, sold to Spaniard Patricio Capetillo, I hope I pronounced that right, for about 18 ounces of gold. Though Rafael was not technically legally a slave on paper, once he reached Spain with the Capetillo family, the Capetillos really still treated him as though he was their slave, their servant. And indeed, they used their legal connections as well as legal loopholes of the time to actually have young Rafael registered as their official servant, as their house servant. But no, at this time, he was bonded to the Capetillo family as their property. However, Young Rafael was very defiant. He was showing his independence from the start. At the age of 15, he managed to escape the Capetillo family and worked odd jobs in and around northern Spain for a number of years. He would haul things, he would pull things off with big barges, he would work near the docks. These very labor-intensive jobs. It was not until he met famous English traveling clown, Tony Grease. Probably Grease. I shouldn't even be making his name sound all exotic. But Tony Grease, who took him on, not really as an apprentice, even though that's what he was called, an apprentice, you know, but as a domestic servant, essentially. He became in servitude to another higher ranking Caucasian person. Not a Spaniard this time, but an Englishman. Better, right? So essentially, Tony Grease would incorporate Rafael into his performances, usually forcing Rafael to portray a parody, a minstrel parody of a black person, very upbeat, very cheery, very ignorant, and he would also subjugate Rafael to a lot of stuntman positions, jumping off of things, tumbling, doing those different types of things that clowns would do back in the day. The duo refined their craft and started to prepare an act that they can not only perform again and again and again, but an act that they can be remembered by, an act that can propel them in their career as clowns. And they essentially got their big break once they became connected to the famous Cantalon businessman known as Joseph Ollier. And Mr. Ollier was very, very important. He was a businessman and famous for co-founding the illustrious, the glamorous Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge, you know, the movie, but also the super iconic famous nightclub of the 19th century and forward. So this man was a pretty big deal. It was also around this time when Rafael's partner, Tony Grease, bestowed him with the honorable, the respectful, this name just screams prestige. This stage name known only as Chocolat, aka chocolate. I wonder why he was called that. The duo unfortunately ended, prompting Grease to go one way and Chocolat was basically left to fend for himself. He started to make his own big break when he started doing his own solo act known only as The Wedding of Chocolat. Coincidentally, it was at this time when he met and fell in love with a woman, in fact a divorcee named Marie, who had 2 kids already from a previous marriage. Talk about scandal. Like, this man was not only a black independent, essentially businessman during the mid 1800s, but he also was a clown who fell in love and married a white woman who was a divorcee who had 2 kids. And in fact, they didn't really get married, they kind of were partners. And so this was just like, wow. In 1895, while working with the famous Nouveau Cirque, the New Circus, he was paired with another British performer by the name of George Fouty. And in this wonderful collaboration, it would help to not only define Chocolat's career, but it would also help to immortalize him within the Parisian clown circus history. Their duo would go on to perform for almost 20 years, igniting the Parisian crowds, igniting people from all over the world who came to Paris to see them perform. Their act normally consisted of Fouty playing the more dominant role, while Rafael remained his silly, minstrel-esque sidekick who was also always doing the mistakes, always walking the wrong way, having to get his hair pulled, you know, the same clown antics of the vintage times. And he basically was Fouty's punching bag. And as you can imagine, as a clown in the circus, that was definitely something to be amused by. People were amused. They already saw black people as subhuman. So in this act where they are basically putting it out there for everyone to see, everyone's beliefs, the French crowd loved it. This same shtick also helped, unfortunately, to solidify the silly, childish, they need to be controlled and helped stereotype of black people at this time. It was essentially a dilemma. It really was a dilemma. Damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Chocolat really was a trailblazer. He really made his mark in a time where black people had limited to no options. Not to just be a servant, but also a performer who people looked up to and paid to see. That's pretty much, it's a lot. Not a lot of black people made me blind Tom. If you see my last video, you would know what I'm talking about. Would pay to see a black performer. So, you know, poor Tom. By the early 19th century, the duo had really reached their apex by beginning to perform a series of performances at the Grand Folie Bergère cabaret and nightclub. However, with the arrival of new wave circus performers, you know, the acrobats, the actors, more embellishment to the circus craft, as well as the arrival of black Americans performers coming into Europe that were part of the minstrel cakewalk performances, the duo were basically starting to become a thing of the past, and they definitely knew it. In November of 1909, a Parisian newspaper had mistakenly printed a very weird article that Chocolat had died. And however, the performer was indeed alive, and this definitely angered him as well as some of his fans. He sent actually a letter to the publisher detailing that, well, you know, he was not dead. He was very much alive. And it read,
"Sir, the director read in your newspaper that Mr. Millier, the intelligent journalist, wrote that I am dead like Augustus. I pray you, say that I am alive, and that I am playing every night in Chocolat avec Dieu at the new circus. You can judge that I did not even turn white. Please accept my respect. Chocolat. Please correct it because it hurts me."
Indeed, this man could catch no break. So 1910 marked the official ending of the duo Fouty et Chocolat, with Fouty moving on to work within the clown role of a production of Romeo and Juliet at the famous Octagon Theater, while Rafael actually tried his hand in a new type of performativity. He tried to work within the theater, but as a black man who has a lack of grasp of the French language, remember, he was Cuban. So instead, he continued on his role as a clown, but he would work within hospitals. He would work with the sick and the infirm, becoming actually one of the first clowns to do so, one of the first clowns to incorporate laughter therapy within a lot of his act. Now, the loss of Fouty absolutely proved to be quite detrimental to the career of Chocolat. Rafael fell deeper and deeper basically into obscurity, picking up a drinking habit, picking up depression. You could imagine reaching heights where black people just had not reached before, and then just like that, you're done. It is believed that the great Chocolat fell ill and passed away in 1917, possibly at the age of about 52. Now, it is really important to mention at the end of this video that the inspirational and hardworking man that was lost to history until the 21st century, became very significant to the public. It wasn't until his story was actually released and written biographically by French historian Gérard Noiriel. Please, I hope I pronounced that right. In 2012. Rafael, aka Chocolat, was also immortalized in the 2016 French film titled, well, Chocolat, starring French actor Omar Sy. This spark added to the further conversation and dialogue of global racial injustice which had denied Black performers essentially the ability to truly hone their craft without risk of becoming a stereotype, without risk of being exploited like Blind Tom, like so many other performers that came after. Black performers that had really fought for their right to be artists, true artists. And we really see this trickling down through history, through many of our greats that we still are blessed to have today. So, in conclusion, mes amis, I really hope that you're doing good during this time. Once again, as I always do, I'm going to link some organizations below that I think are doing great work. The work does not end. Education does not end. I am a really strong believer in, even though I'm not going to school for history, I'm going to school for psychology. I definitely do feel as though looking to the past can really help us not only rectify the present, but understand why we got here. A lot of the groundwork for how people act today has really been set not really too long ago. So I really hope that you guys have learned something from this. So, with that being said, please don't ever, mes amis, forget to be independently you.
Be independent, be yourself, don't be no one else. Let's talk about your body. Be independent, be a star, just be who you are. Let's break some taboos.